So today we're here to talk about recipes. So I'm going to give a little preamble before we invite the esteemed panel up. But we're excited to be here and talk about food, something near and dear to my heart, as you can tell. So if we can go to the next slide, Ron. So one of the things we love about food and recipes is it drives inspiration. A lot of times we'll talk about the point of transaction, but really to a large extent, it starts with that point of inspiration. So you see a beautiful image like this, and apologies for the lighting here, but we know that 9 out of 10 consumers use recipes, and it does drive inspiration. The usage of recipes over time, especially for purveyors selling food, is significant. And so whether it's pancakes, potatoes, stuff like that, we know that people are using them to build lists. And obviously if you get on the list, you get in the cart, so it's critically important to drive that inspiration, to turn that inspiration into the point of decision and ultimately the transaction. Go to the next slide, Ron. Well, anyone hungry, by the way? First thing in the morning, right? Patty's like, we're going to get burgers later, right? Fun fact, so is Dana in the room from Egg Board? Okay, good. I only like scrambled eggs, so we started working with the Egg Board, and they're showing us all these recipes, and I'm like, okay, before we continue, I have to admit, I really don't like deviled eggs, and I don't like eggs like that, but it does look gorgeous, right? And so we know, despite my own penchant for not liking eggs, recipes do drive trial. So if you create something gorgeous, wonderful, delicious, like that, people are going to decide that they want to give it a try. So think about a high percentage of people using recipes, a high percentage of driving trial, especially for new products, different products. Recipes become a huge, valuable tool in the toolbox for both brands and retailers. Next slide, please. And as we talk about the value for retailers, it's about basket building, right? So if we get on the list based on that inspiration, what we're seeing is baskets grow. So more than 3 items on average when you have somebody using a recipe. And in terms of incremental dollars, there's about $28 incrementally when you activate recipes in the right way. And so they're very valuable, not just from feeling good because that's a great looking image and getting people excited about it, but it does create and build baskets, which is what we're all here to do, right? Next slide. And then if you have a robust recipe platform, and if you become a trusted source of content for your shoppers, it does drive loyalty and repeat, right? So if you think about, again, high inspiration, high basket building, repeat, right? You can't beat that. And so recipes become a huge driver and an important part of a retailer's playbook. So next slide. All right, so with that said, like you didn't want to hear my voice read that thing. You don't want to hear my voice the whole time. You definitely don't want to see my face. So with that, I'd like to invite our panelists up, and we'll do some introductions, and then we'll move into questions. So Sean, Tom, Brad, please join us. And remember, make them jealous. All right, so before we get started, let's have some introductions. So, and first of all, this is kind of cool that we're down here as opposed to up there looking from on high, so a little more casual and hopefully a little bit more conversational. So, Sean?
Sean Tuckett, CEO of WebStop. We help grocers with their digital marketing, so their websites, their digital circulars, recipe programs. So basically just helping everybody figure out ways to keep the shopper engaged and really focus on in-store sales though, so a little different than the e-commerce guys, but been doing this for 15 years now. So
give it up to the mustache.
Gotta change it up.
I said give it up to the mustache.
Brad. Maybe give up the mustache.
Hi, I'm Brad Norris with the Coca-Cola Company, and I'm responsible for our relationship globally with the Independent Grocers Alliance. So I'm one of the few people in the Coca-Cola Company dedicated to the success of independent grocers.
Tom?
Yeah, I'm Tom Charlie, Charlie Family Shop and Saves. I'm a fourth generation retailer based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm in charge of strategic development for my organization. I'm heavily involved in NGA. This place is amazing and I'm really excited to be here.
And when I asked who has a cool voice to read anything, they said Tom. And I'm like, well, he's on the panel, that would be cheating. So, all right, so let's talk about, we can go to the next slide. Let's talk about meal solutions as a growth engine. So, Tom, we'll start with you since you're the retailer. So at a high level, as I mentioned, we know recipes drive inspiration, list building, but from a ground level, why is it critical for retailers to lean into recipes from a marketing perspective, both in-store and online?
Well, I think one of the earlier slides that was mentioned about 90% of customers utilize recipes to come into your store and build out their meals. First of all, I think that's insane that 10% don't. I don't know 10% of people that don't actually use recipes to make meals. But for the retailer, I look at it from a perspective of you have the ability to incentivize people to buy more items and cross-merchandise in your store and help grow loyalty through convenience and create situations and environments in your store to help create a better experience for the customer. One of the things that I recognize in my organization is that friction is one of the biggest killers of convenience in your store. And a big friction point for customers that they might not even know exists is they don't know what they want to get. They don't know what they need to buy. And so by eliminating that friction, what do I actually want to get while I'm in your store, creates a much better experience for that consumer, which at the end of the day is a much better thing for me, building loyalty from that consumer.
Makes sense. So Brad, we know Coke goes good with everything, right? In terms of
Absolutely.
In terms of meals and sources, and disclaimer: I used to work at Coca-Cola for 17 years, so we'll get that out of the way. So Brad, we know from data and other sources, we know recipes can be the #1 reason shoppers try out new products. Outperforming friend recommendations, outperforming social media. Why is it critical for a brand like Coca-Cola, right? For the most part, we're not making, using your products as part of the recipes, although I do make a mean brisket with Coca-Cola in it. Why is it critical for a brand like Coke to move beyond more static brand-only advertising into meal solutions?
Well, for us, it's survival. When we look at a brand like Coca-Cola, the #1 occasion for consuming the beverage is at lunch and dinner at home. While you see our advertising around, the big game, or you see our advertising around Final Four or 4th of July, it's really home meals where most of the beverages are consumed. And so if we're not a part of that conversation, if we're not included as a part of that basket with that recipe, then we've lost an opportunity to connect with the shopper.
Makes sense. So can you elaborate then on the value? So we just talked to Tom and sort of got to the store level, but how do you connect then in the digital environment? How do you become the default brand in that digital basket?
Yeah, so the way we do it is mirrored. So obviously the way we're thinking about it today, it used to be we wanted to be a part of that meal solution in the store, and so maybe it's an end cap that has a beverage along with other items. But now the digital shelf has become equal to or more important than the shelf itself, because for more and more of our shoppers today, they're planning their entire trip based on that digital experience before they ever get to the store. And so if they're not thinking about us all too often, the beverage can be forgotten. And while people talk a lot about the situation where we're in a leveraged environment where it's Coke versus Pepsi, we compete much more against tap water than we do against Pepsi. And so for us, it would be a lost occasion, and it can just disappear.
So recipes play a critical role in making that connection with
Absolutely.
the brand. Okay. So we talked about the digital shelf, Sean. So how are recipes showing up in a way that's going to be meaningful to the shopper as they're on that digital journey?
So when you think about, specifically like independent retailers, versus the behemoth retailers, the Amazons, the Walmarts, the Targets, those guys are just buying eyeballs en masse. They're flooding the internet with ads and really trying to win by just outspending everybody else. But for the independent, you need to be strategic. You need to find ways to create habits and be a solution for your shoppers. Create that connection so that they're coming back regularly. So recipes can be a great way to do that. It's not just price an item that's going to be hard to beat Walmart and Kroger on and things like that. It's a solution for that busy mom who just thinks that this is a chore during the week and just wants to get something healthy on the table for her kids. It's the solution for the single guy who he's like, I don't want to just have plain chicken again. I need something. So the recipe can be that extra piece that draws you in, and finding a way to get that in front of the shopper, whether it be social media or email or in-store cards that they can take, like merchandising. That recipe can become the drawback on a regular basis. So finding a way to get that inspiration going so that then you're thought of as that solution to whatever the problem the shopper is trying to solve.
Okay, so let's we advance the slide. We talk about inspiration and we're talking about retail, but one of the ways, one of the ways that we see recipes showing up is social media. TikTok and lots of trends, and we may even have, we don't have a video up there, but so to some extent we're battling social media for inspiration. While recipes are important, right, we're not necessarily scrolling through the retailer sites on a hourly basis when we're bored like we do social media. So let's talk about the competitive advantage of retailers posting their own recipe content versus sort of giving up the recipe or giving up the basket to social media.
Well, I don't know about you guys, if you guys can relate to this, but commonly throughout the week I'll think about, I need to check this on my phone. I need to open my phone and look at an email. I need to open my phone to do this. And then by the time I open my phone, I've already been sucked into something else. And within 5 minutes, I'm like, what did I originally open my phone for? And you're like, wait, did this just happened? This is a brain disconnect. This is bad. But you think about social media that way. If you're allowing your shopper to just go to social media to find this stuff, good luck if they're ever going to get to you. Social media is just, keep them in this loop, keep them scrolling, but its goal is not to get them out of the social media app and into your store. Their goal is to keep that attention there. So if you can take that, that piece that grabs them on social media, have it be a quick link over to your site, or do something else to get them to start thinking of your site as the place to go, whether it's a reward that they can get, a coupon to incentivize them the first time, or in-store marketing to tell them. If you can create that habit where they go to your site regularly, that's that habit-forming marketing that is going to keep them going, like last week, my store solved this problem for me, I'm going to go back and check there. If you're just relying on social media to do it, good luck getting them, to get over to you, because social media is really pushing the opposite of that.
So Tom, in terms of recipes showing up online, can you talk about ways that you're leveraging them?
Yeah, to start, what we really like to do internally is communicate to our staff, hey, these are the things that are kind of going on online. If we have a specific thing, so like, for example, in 4th of July, we have like a steak sale. We'll make sure that we communicate to our team, hey, the sale's going on, but we're going to be promoting and posting and boosting links to say, hey, we have a steak sale going on, and here are the other items that'll be good with it. Here's the recipe. Make sure internal communication is good so everyone knows, hey, be prepared to merchandise these items and cross-merchandise in store. So like on an operational perspective. And also just making sure that we're posting things socially through our social media. That's something that we push really hard, is to promote those different recipes, that occasion-based recipes for our organization.
I think one of the fallacies is, well, they're going to go on social media for recipes, etc. And if you do that, to Sean's point, first of all, you might get caught in that doom loop and lose 2 hours of your time when you do it. But also you're kind of, to some extent, giving away that basket. And so you may not be able to compete with influencers and creating wonderful videos on your website, but it's kind of like, we did a project years ago that some people in the room I think were involved in terms of looking at the pet aisle and making sure the pet aisle was set up properly versus retailers who were saying, well, they're going to Amazon or Walmart or stuff like that. And if you give up the basket for certain items, you're giving up the entire basket. So Recipes, I think, play a critical role, but making sure that they show up in the right way, and obviously you're not sort of over-investing and doing crazy things with them. It's important to have them on that website and to make sure that people know it and you're driving inspiration.
And then one of the other things that we do on our website, and this is Sean's area as well, obviously, is like we have our weekly ad that you can click through, find recipes, like find inspiration with this item. So if you click on that item or you find recipe, it'll be like, hey, you can make these multiple different items from different meals based off of this item that's in our ad.
Yeah, having silos on your website where recipes are all over here and digital coupons are all over here and weekly ads here, you're asking the shopper to jump through all these different hoops to find the connection. If you can put that all in one place, the weekly ad is still the #1 driver of traffic to grocery websites on a weekly basis. Bring that valuable content right into the weekly ad. You can't do that in a print ad as easily, but on a website, you can literally have the coupon that supports the ingredient on sale right there in the ad. You can click the coupon, and then you can literally have the recipe pop up. You can browse it, go right back to viewing the ad, and that's taking friction away for the shopper. It's not making them go on a treasure hunt. And one thing I'll add on the social media, because I think this is just an important point to emphasize. We're not going to beat the engagement of social media. Like as a retailer, this idea that like, oh, shoppers love apps, shoppers love, this, they're going to come to my app or do this. They're going to go to TikTok. They're going to go to Instagram. We can't, when people get up and say, oh, like make your site the destination just like Instagram, just like TikTok, I think that's a little bit naive. I mean, those sites are part of the, they're part of everything. People go to those. But when you're on those social media sites, having that piece that makes it easy to draw them back to you. So a coupon that actually clips in social media, but is only valid at your store, or the ability to add all the ingredients from social media to your shopping list on your retailer website. I mean, those technologies exist now. That's where you can really use social media to your advantage. It's when you just put the idea out there and then hope that they're going to get back to you to buy it. You're taking a big risk.
I think the keeping as much as you can within that ecosystem. So if somebody is on your website, you want to offer up both the opportunity to create inspiration as well as purchase, whether that's list building, whether that's buying from recipes direct, as you said, it's always important. So Brad, from a brand perspective, we just talked about websites. Now, what's the value of having your brands associated with retailers' websites?
Well, the retailer owns the relationship with the shopper. And so if we're not associated with their website, and that's where the shopper is going to find solutions, then we don't have that connection. And so it's one more point of having that conversation and building a relationship with that consumer, with that shopper, is through the retailer. And so we can't live without it. And it doesn't need to be something super complex. It can be, treating us like a wine and saying, okay, you're creating this meal. This would go great with a Coke, or this would go great with a Topo Chico mineral water, or this would go great with a Sprite. And so we just want to make sure that we're part of the conversation and that we remind the shopper that, oh, by the way, you need a beverage. This may not be the beverage that you'll choose, but it reminds them that beverage is going to be a part of their meal.
Yeah, I think key to what you just said was part of the conversation, and going back to what you said, Sean, we're not going to be the recipe solution for every single person, every single shopper, but if you're not activating recipes on your website, if you're not marketing into recipes, you're not going to be part of that conversation.
And it doesn't need to be complex. It doesn't need to be Julia Child. I saw a video
for those of you
woman,
who are younger than 50.
Well, I saw a video of a woman who was putting together care packages for a food bank, and she felt that people who need those services needed a treat. And so she took a baking pan and a cake mix, and she took an icing, and she took a can of Sprite, and she created a little card saying, okay, replace 1 cup of the water with a can of Sprite, and you'll get a whole different kind of cake. And she just bundled it all together, and she was producing hundreds of these. There's no reason why a retailer couldn't do something similar and say, hey, you just take these 4 things and you have something that is ready to go. And so the key word is solution. Your shoppers are looking for solutions. We want to be a part of that solution.
And you talked about, viral recipes, right? We've seen like the 1-pan feta pasta that's went crazy and feta sold out and stuff like that. Does your team do anything in terms of monitoring what's happening sort of in popular culture and lean into them, whether that's online or in store?
As a small 3-store independent retailer, I would love to say that we're on top of all of these trends, and no is the answer. But I will say though that the case competition that we had yesterday with the students from the different schools came up with some amazing ways, and we got some people back here to give a shout out to some of the amazing ways that you can follow trends, and it's not as difficult as I thought it was going to be. And they came up with some amazing ideas, so I'm definitely going to be going back to my office tomorrow and start doing some research into some of the ideas that they proposed and seeing how we can go forward and stay on top of those trends.
Yeah, I think as we talked about, or I think Sean mentioned the fact that we don't want to say, well, social media is not happening and people only come to our site for recipes. And so if we can connect what is happening in more popular culture and like move quickly to take advantage of that. So setting up a small display or end cap with that feta pasta and stuff like that, it just reinforces what's happening in the marketplace. We go to the next slide, Ron. All right, we'll talk about some dessert. So let's talk about exactly where retailers should sort of turn on this growth engine of recipes. So we know that 82% of shoppers reference digital recipes on their mobile devices while physically standing in the store. So think about, you said, you're not sure what those 10% are doing without recipes, right? We know people are actually looking at recipes in store. I know when I go to the grocery store, oftentimes I'm like, okay, now what else do I need for that recipe? So I'm an amateur chef and a crappy list builder, so I'll often reference recipes. How are you activating recipes in the physical store? Whether that's QR code displays or ways of, like you said, cross-merchandising. How do you bring things to life that are more about meal solutions and recipes?
Yeah, so in our stores, what we do is we'll go to specific categories, like so, say asparagus and produce. And asparagus is one of those items, if you cook a lot, you understand how to use it and what kind of recipes it goes with. But if you're kind of a younger person that doesn't have a lot of experience in the kitchen, you might see asparagus and be like, that's a little intimidating looking at that vegetable, understanding what you can do with it. So what we'll do is we'll put a QR code with a link to a recipe that we built on our Facebook page, and we'll just post that there. So when they scan it, it'll just go to a custom-made recipe that we have. And we have them throughout our stores, just to make life a little easier for people. So when they're in the store and they say, oh, I love asparagus or Brussels sprouts or whatever, we use the primary categories. Like, so we'll use produce and meat. So we'll have cuts in the meat department and then produce items that will have QR codes on the shelf tag, and then you just scan it, goes straight to the recipe to make life a little easier. And like I was saying earlier, a little less friction for that consumer.
So we'll address maybe the elephant in the room in terms of cross-category promotion and different buyers and different fiefdoms. How do you ensure that the solution for the shopper, that recipe, comes to life within your organization, as opposed to, oh well, you're not touching the produce section because you're bringing in meat and stuff like that. How do you ensure that you're more shopper first?
Sorry, can you rephrase that a little bit?
Yeah, so oftentimes, I know back in my Coke days when we were talking about meal solutions and displays and stuff like that, there's friction between different merchants.
Yeah, okay, so I understand. So you're saying basically how do you get your managers to get along in place? I understand, okay. I think that comes through a culture that we build internally in our organization. We have meetings every week where we discuss, hey, what are our cross-merchandising plans? What are we trying to accomplish in the store as a whole? We really take a look at our store as a holistic view, because the success of our produce manager helps the success of our meat manager and vice versa. It's very easy to get off the rails with someone like, I am not giving you a foot of my case, or I'm not going to cross-promote with you. But we are very diligent and intentional about it. We hold our team accountable to those standards. So yes, it can, if you don't build that culture of teamwork, but that is something we fight very hard to do.
I think it's important to focus, again, on the shopper and what's important to them. And if you're going to lean into recipes, right, you can't have fiefdoms. And you can't just say, oh, well, I'm not adding sugar to this display because that belongs there in the middle of the bottom shelf of an aisle versus perhaps in produce.
Yeah, we have, like I said, every week we have meetings where it's specifically dedicated to saying, hey, what are you going to bring over to my produce department, and what am I going to bring over to your meat department, or how am I going to integrate the bakery into my department, or what items do you think will work with us? So it's a very much a culture of understanding that what matters is that customer experience.
Makes sense. So, Sean, from a technology standpoint, where and how should a retailer prioritize activation? Is it, as we talk about, dedicated recipe section on the website, shoppable links, or even perhaps like voice-enabled technology to bring it to bear?
Well, yeah, I think it goes back to just, what Tom had mentioned about reducing friction for shoppers. So if you give them just a recipe link, and then it's every single category, organized in the old school way of thinking of appetizers and dinners and desserts, that's a lot to go through. That's work. I gotta search, I gotta find the right one. People don't want more work. People want inspiration. So how do you take recipes out of those kind of buckets and put them in places where the shopper already is? The weekly ad, on the homepage of your site, in the weekly email, on your social media. Put it where they're already going, and then, pick something that's actually exciting. I mean, recipes bring fun back to food. So many people, it's just the weekly, like, oh, I gotta make another meal. My wife always makes the joke, like, I didn't know when I had kids that I was signing up to be a full-time chef for the next 18 years. And then these little, unhappy customers who are like, oh, we're having this again. You want to make, whoever the meal maker at home is the hero. You want to make their lives easier. You want to give them something that adds a little, either ease or just fun. So putting those recipes in places that, are going to be seen, it's way better than it's saying, oh yeah, we have these great categories, come look through these. So, I think, just closing that thought out, just making sure that you're not relying on the shopper to find it. You're putting it in a place where they're already going.
That makes sense. So one of the things we haven't touched on yet, and you said sort of findability and making it relevant, is recipes play a significant role from a seasonality standpoint, right? What you're cooking in the fall is very different, perhaps, than what you're grilling in the summer, right? You don't see a lot of butternut squash perhaps on the grill, but you do see it a lot in fall recipes. Brad, as we talk about opportunities to connect from a seasonality standpoint, are your brands looking to dive into meal solutions recipes on a seasonal basis, or more on a sort of ongoing basis?
We do that ourselves. So we publish recipes that either go with our beverages or utilize our beverages as an ingredient. And so we do that. It's actually fairly easy for us to have that kind of conversation with the chain. So we can talk with them about what their solutions are, and then we can come up with a program with them, and then we can execute it across all their stores. It becomes much more complex when we're working with independents. And so for us, it's really about making sure that we put the right emphasis on it. And so here in the US, we have 62 different bottlers. And we evaluate those bottlers every year, and some of the key measures we evaluate them on are their partnership with food. We know that that is the most important occasion for us. And so we actually send auditors into your stores and say, okay, is the bottler here activating beverages with meals, beverages with food? And so they're looking for those opportunities because they're being judged on that. And so if you have a program and you want to involve a company like the Coca-Cola Company, you merely need to say, hey, we want to partner with you on this. And they're going to go, oh, pick me. Because that's something that they're being judged on.
So what role, Tom, as you're doing recipes and activating, do beverages play in terms of basket building?
Well, you just gave me a lot of insight into your process, and I appreciate that. It makes a lot of sense now. What role do beverages have in recipe building? Is that what you're saying? How a designer store?
Well, in basket building.
Yeah. Well, I think so. From a customer average basket size perspective, we love to put large packaged beverages up front. And the reason being is that they will grab a cart And everyone knows that when you have a cart, you have a substantially larger basket size than if you don't, or if you have a basket. So that's a strategic decision that we make, is to have large category. Like, so we'll have like 2 liters up front, we'll have the large teas, the large cases, like 12 packs, case of water up front. So it's just like a strategic move. And then throughout the rest of the store, we'll put them in strategic areas. So like next to like hot foods, when they're like, hey, I'm gonna have a grab and go meal, I'll have my 24 ounce sodas or 20 ounce sodas back there, because we understand that if you're here to buy hot food, you're going to want to drink, and then that's going to go right alongside of it. And then we have a pizza store in our store. We have an entire run of Coke refrigeration. You're welcome. You're welcome. And no, to be fair, Coke's a great partner of ours. I'm not trying to promote them or anything, but they're so yeah.
We might have to separate these two guys.
Yeah,
I love Coke, by the way. I love Coke.
Yeah, we're good. I'll be quiet. So yeah, no, we just have different strategic placements throughout the store because we understand that there's different areas of purchase for product that they carry, and then we partner with them to decide how do we want to lay out the store with their products.
Makes sense. All right, we're going to the next slide, Ron. So let's talk about quantifying that win-win-win. Back in the day, we used to talk about the triple win. So if you create a win for the shopper, a win for the brand, you're creating a win, obviously, for the retailer as well. Customers using recipe content add an average of 3 more items as we showed up there. And obviously, Tom, you talked about the value of having the beverages up front, but has, in terms of the shift for online versus in store, are you seeing those who are using recipes build much larger baskets overall, or is there a way to quantify that?
I don't have a specific statistic behind it. I'm just anecdotally from my utilization. First of all, I don't know anyone that doesn't use, like I mentioned earlier, 9 out of 10. I don't understand that other 10 people, because when I'm shopping in a store, I have my cell phone out. I'm like, all right, what next? What do I need to get next? Just looking through my recipe. I'm like, okay, I need to get that. And first of all, I hate when they write like a book for a recipe. I'm just gonna put it out there first. But you don't miss anything. People had the assumption that if you give them a list of things to buy, they will not buy other things, and your basket will lower. I find that I don't forget things when I have a list, and your basket is exactly as you wanted it. You might throw a few extra things in, and again, like I said, it's anecdotal, but I am confident that my basket is larger when I use a recipe, or a list for that matter, for my purchasing.
So you brought something interesting, because I'm the same way, Tom. I'm like, oh my gosh, that recipe looks great, that image. And then you start scrolling through it and you're reading about why this recipe is great and this, that, the jump to recipe piece. So I think it's important to understand kind of the role recipes place and where they are, as opposed to, it's not an influencer page, it's not social media. So to some extent, get to the point quickly, so drive inspiration, but take away that friction.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was just saying. Take away the friction for the consumer.
Yeah. So, Sean, in terms of the desire to take away the friction, we all want to do that. And sometimes technology can get in the way, not just help. What are you guys doing in terms of sort of trying to take that friction out, but still drive that inspiration?
I mean, it just goes back to some of the points we've already hit on. Put the recipes where the shopper already is. Don't give them extra work. You make it something that they aren't going to have to treasure hunt to find. Put it in their email box, once a week. Put it on the social media, but make sure it drives back to the site. Put it in the weekly ad, so that you're not expecting they're going to see something in the weekly ad and take the time, to go find it. And one thing, never ever put links on your website that go to other sites. Keep them on your website. You're going to hear sometimes from certain other people like, oh, just send them over to our site. It's great over there. Don't let them leave your site. That is super important. As soon as they're gone, the chances of them coming back drops exponentially. So keep them in that environment, but not just for your personal gain, but because in that environment you can guide the journey. You can guide them to getting that on the list. You can guide them so that they don't forget the things, and when they get home go, oh no, I missed the key ingredient. Now I gotta, go back to the store. Keep them, make their lives easier by doing all the steps to, get them to the finish line.
So you brought up something interesting, because earlier you talked about the value of recipes within social media and email and digital circulars and stuff like that. Is there a difference, especially if you're doing within the email or social media, in terms of how recipes get represented to make them take that click, right? You said it's difficult to get them from one place to another, and you don't want them off the site, but are you approaching recipes different based on a retailer's website versus social media versus email?
I mean, video has become the key engagement point. I mean, we've seen it with all the different social medias, with everything, now LinkedIn's pushing all these silly videos and stuff. Video is it is the way to get people's attention. The TikTok, the Reels, all of it. So, absolutely, even if it's just an email, an animated GIF, it doesn't have to be a full video, but just that movement that catches their eye. I mean, shoppers are seeing on average like over 200, 300 ads a day. You gotta have that piece that stands out.
So, huge value in terms of the right photography, video, making it appealing, as opposed to, perhaps saying, oh, I'm doing recipes and I'm just throwing up stuff, or perhaps me taking a photo of it.
Yes, as much as, somebody wants to use their phone in the store to just take a quick shot, it's gotta look appetizing. I mean, I love like the homegrown stuff you see from local independents and stuff, but for food, make sure it's appetizing. If that image doesn't make your mouth water, you've already lost.
Awesome. All right, so we're coming up on time here, I think. The red light is flashing somewhere. So what's, as we close out for each of you, what's one piece of advice for independent retailers you have to either advance what they're doing with recipes, or even to some extent just start scaling and doing things with recipes? So I'll start with you, Tom.
I think the first thing I would look to with this is something we talked about earlier. It's not really about recipes, but it's about the culture in your organization of working together, because having those teams work together to help support a program is essential to make it work at store level. And to be fair, that's really what I care about, is store level experience. So making sure your team understands what it is you're trying to do, why it's important to the operations, and why it is important to the consumers. And once you get to that point, then you can start building out your infrastructure and working with our partners to develop a program that makes sense for our organization. And the other thing I would say is, if you're going to do it, do it. Actually invest the time and the energy into doing it properly. Don't just be like, oh, we have recipes, and then like throw 4 of them up online once and then forget about it for 6 months and then do it again. So be consistent. Make sure that the processes that you're implementing are replicable and consistent.
I said the last question, but I'll ask you one. We'll come back.
Thanks.
In terms of recipe content, how are you guys sourcing recipe content?
This guy right here.
All right.
Web stop. Write that down.
Brad, what's the one piece of advice you have for retailers in terms of leaning into the space?
To be complete as you can be. So the shopper is time starved. They need a complete solution. And the more that you can do to make that easy for them by combining both your operational expertise, your partnership with your vendors, as well as your technology solutions to make it as easy for them as possible, the more likely you are to be successful and to use that opportunity to build loyalty. Because that's ultimately what you want. You want to be the place they turn to for those solutions.
I think we had a panel yesterday talking about the value-obsessed shopper and that mindset. They're looking for value and leaning into, just price an item doesn't cut it, even though they are looking for value. And so making sure that you have, like, as you said, the right things for them to come in. This is an area where you can lean in and create differentiation for your stores, as opposed to just sort of cheap prices. Sean, back to you.
Yeah, I try not to use hyperbole too much, but I don't think it's ever been harder to be an independent grocery store owner. I mean, I think the level of competition, we heard in a talk on Sunday that, Walmart and Amazon combined spent over $100 million on shopper engagement just last year. I mean, you have harder competition than you've ever had, and you're understaffed, you're stretched thin, you guys have to do more with less. So when you think about recipes, try try to find those unlocks. You know, we're not saying just add more work. You know, find something else for an associate that needs to be added on their plate. You know, we as you know, the tech partner, we have recipe solutions that we can help with. Your brands want to give you recipe content. And if you don't have time to, you know, call the brands and work that out with them, call us, we'll do it for you. We have a recipe program, we have brands that are saying we want to get in front of more independent shoppers. So, you know, lean on your partners to make it easier for you guys. You have plenty to do already. These brands are making great recipes that you can put on your sites. Lean on them, lean on your tech partners to make those connections, because you know, you don't need this to just be another thing you have to hire somebody to do. There are people who can help you with this and unlock it for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, you know, one of the takeaways of this panel should not be, hey, recipes are awesome, let me go create a food studio, right? And especially for, smaller independents, right? So leaning into partnerships and the power of partnerships to help, whether that's Webstop or others, brands. You know, Coca-Cola has a great library of mouth-watering recipes. There's a number of food boards within the room that have great recipes. So the content's available, and so, you know, making sure that you're leveraging and leaning into your partners to bring that content in to the organization is critically important. And you know, as we close, we'll talk about the fact that excuse me, IGA is working with Webstop to create a new portal for recipes across the board, so that when we can help you create the recipe experience that is needed within your organization. And so we're excited about that as we go forward. But most importantly, making sure that you're focused on solutions for your shopper, as we talked about, and I think Tom summed up well. It's about the solution, it's not about the ingredients. And so you need to be very, very focused against how do we deliver the right thing for the shopper, not the right thing for how our organization is set up. So recipes can be that untapped growth engine, but you need to make sure that you're understanding you're doing it for the shopper, you're doing it for the right reasons, and it's not just about ingredients. So with that, let's give it up for the panel, and we're really loud.